All right, guys, lesson 30 here. Jesus answers John the Baptist. So again, make sure you're at Matthew chapter 11. We're going to start at verse 1. Okay, so you can follow along here. And it came to pass, when Jesus had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. Now, when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples, and said unto him, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? Jesus answered and said unto them, Go, and show John again those things which ye do hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he, whosoever shall not be offended in me. So let's take a look at that first part here where we have a conversation. Where is John the Baptist? Garrett? He's in prison. Okay. The disciples are sent out, okay, to go preach here for a time. They're sent away by Jesus. Okay. But there's a difference here between the disciples and John the Baptist. They all preach to the Jews. Okay, that's who they preach to. They only preach to the Jews. But the difference is the disciples could also heal. Jesus gave them the power to heal. So they go away. We see that here. Okay? And John is in prison. And again, he is hearing about Christ. So it must be that some of maybe John's old disciples, they've gone out and they follow Jesus around. And then they go back and they report back to John the Baptist. Okay? But when John hears the stories, he's kind of wondering, well, in John's mind, when Jesus came, different things would be happening. Just like the Pharisees were looking for a Christ who would come and build an earthly kingdom and would come and rule over them, and Jesus would make them make the Pharisees the wise men, the counselors in his kingdom, and they'd have a great important place. So John here too, he's lonely, we can imagine, right? I mean, you'd be lonely in a prison cell, sad, kind of depressed. And so he has some doubts here about Jesus. Okay? He didn't understand all things. Just like there's things that we don't understand always either about the Bible. But John the Baptist didn't understand, he couldn't understand that Jesus is going to have to die. Okay? And that his own work, maybe John the Baptist didn't understand that his work was finished. Even though he had to decrease, maybe he didn't also understand, I'm going to decrease so much that I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to be stuck in prison. Now we know what's going to happen to him eventually in prison. Jesse? Yeah, he's going to be beheaded. If that's been revealed to John or not, we don't know. But I would guess from this, John doesn't understand that. Okay? And so John asks that question here. Okay? About Jesus, who he is. Does Jesus give a yes or no answer? I mean, does he give a definitive answer to John here? If you look in that text. Kimberly, what do you think? Or Hannah, do we see a yes or no answer here? I don't see a yes or no answer. Instead, what does John tell these men? What does Jesus tell these men to go tell John the Baptist? Well, go back to John and tell him about what? What do they have to tell him about? Joel? What do they have to tell him about? Kenton? What did Jesus command them? Said, well, go tell John about this. Megan? Yeah, go back and tell about all the miracles I've done. Good. Go tell John about that. Okay? Tell him all that you've seen and all that you've heard. So John wants to know, are you he that should come, or do we look for another? John's having some doubts here. You say, well, maybe this is just another great prophet, just like me, and somebody else is still going to come. Maybe John's thinking, I'll get out of prison and I'll continue to prepare the way from Christ. Now, he should know. He saw God announce from heaven, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. There shouldn't have been any doubts. But, again, John is in prison. He's sad. He's probably depressed, just like we would be too. And so Jesus answers, as Megan said there, go tell him about all of the wonders and miracles that you saw. Okay? And then that last verse, that's a little bit tricky for us to understand. Verse 6, we see there, and blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. Okay? Jesus wants John, don't be offended because you don't understand, John. Don't become upset because you don't understand that you're going to die and that I am the Christ. And instead, believe, he's kind of telling him here. Just have faith. Believe. Okay? If I ask you to look up 1 Peter 2 verse 8 about what Jesus was. That text there talks about Jesus as a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. How is Jesus a stone of stumbling for some people? Jesse. Yeah, they don't understand or they don't know exactly what's going on. So, in a sense, he's a stone of stumbling. Okay? Jesus preaches the truth. He teaches the truth. It's right here in God's Word. And yet, many people who call themselves Christians trip right over it. Okay? They don't pay attention to it. They want to do what's in their heart. It's like they're on that wide way again. They want to do the things their way, and they think that will still lead to heaven. Well, it does lead to a gate, but not the gate of heaven. It leads to the gate of destruction. Okay? So, don't be offended. Basically means have faith here, John. Trust. Don't become upset because you're not understanding all things. Not all things are revealed unto you. Okay? All right, so let's go on to verse 7 here, where Jesus is going to teach the multitudes there. Okay, so maybe these men leave and begin to go back, but the ones who stayed around Jesus, those multitudes, they need to understand too about John the Baptist and what John the Baptist's job was and his purpose was. And Jesus is going to reveal to them and teach them about how great John the Baptist was and what a wonderful job he did. So, let's look at verse 7. And as they departed, Jesus began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, what went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind? What does that mean? We're going to go verse by verse here and kind of take a look at that. What's the figure here? Kenton? Okay, good. Megan? Did you have something too?
The wind tells, in a way, tells the reed what to do.
Okay, good. Let's put all of those together there. Very good. Okay. Out in the field, you have a tall reed, right? It's usually got a large head on it. And as the wind comes in, the reed blows to this way one day, and when the wind is blowing the other way, then it bends that way the next day. A reed isn't really strong in that sense. It can't stand up for itself. When the wind pushes it, it bends. Okay? Jesus here is saying, what did you want? Did you want someone you could easily manipulate? Is that the kind of leader that you were looking for, Pharisees? Leaders? That is exactly what you were looking for. You were looking for, if you would speak and say, well, this is what we want, John the Baptist, then John the Baptist would go, oh, okay, well, then I'll go along with that. That's not the case. Okay? That's not the case here. Okay? But that's what the Pharisees wanted. They wanted someone who would bend to whatever, so it's as though the wind that pushes the reed is the ideas of the Pharisees. Whatever the ideas of the Pharisees are this week, now we'll bend this way. Oh, they change your mind? Now we're going to say these are your new principles and policies. Now the reed will bend the other way. That was not John the Baptist, Christ was saying. John the Baptist was a strong, sturdy oak tree. It's not going to bend at all. It's going to stand there and it's going to take the wind. Okay? So, he's saying, what did you go out to see? A reed shaken with the wind? That's exactly right. Good. Then we get verse 8. But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What did John the Baptist wear? Garrett? Camel's hair. John was a Nazarite. Okay? He was a man dedicated to God. He didn't have a lot of riches. He didn't have a royal robe that was soft. Nope. It wasn't right for him to as a Nazarite. Okay? Jesus is challenging them. What did you think? You would go out there and see a man in royal raiment? Someone who was going to be your king? No, he was a prophet. Verse 9, but what went ye out for to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and more than a prophet. Here Jesus is speaking to the greatness of John. John wasn't just a prophet like we can talk about some of the prophets in the Old Testament. Not just a prophet. John was the greatest prophet. Okay? His foot was right there at the door of the kingdom of heaven because he was the last prophet before Christ. So what did you think you were going to see? Were you going out there just to see a prophet? No. If you went out and listened to that man, you found the greatest prophet. Of course, they didn't listen to him, so they won't see that. Verse 10. For this is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare the way before thee. Okay. So John the Baptist's job was there. What was Christ saying? What was John the Baptist's job to do? Joe, what was John the Baptist's job? Yes, teach. And I asked you to reference Malachi 3 verse 10, or 3 verse 1. And we see some of the same words from that text. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the Lord, whom ye seek, shall suddenly come to his temple. Even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in, behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. Boy, what a great prophecy there. I'm going to send a messenger. He'll come before me, meaning God. And the Lord, whom ye seek, shall suddenly come to his temple. Well, of course we see that. Jesus appeared there in the temple. Whether the people believe him or not, that's a whole other thing. Verse 11. Follow along there. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Okay? So we have this teaching here, okay, about John the Baptist being great again. He that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. What does that mean? Well, in a sense it means this. You are blessed. You have all of the Scriptures, the completeness of the Scriptures. John didn't have that. So John believed. John was the greatest of the prophets, but in a way it makes us, even though we might say, well, we're less in the kingdom, John, we should put John the Baptist on a high pedestal. So in a sense, we're little compared to John the Baptist. But in a sense, too, God has blessed you more than John the Baptist because you have God's Holy Spirit working in your heart so that you can know all of the Scriptures and you can understand things that John didn't get to understand. So in that sense, you're greater. We've seen the finished work. We even have the book of Revelation that teaches us what the end times are going to be about. Make sure we have an attitude that that's a privilege. Okay? What a wonderful blessing that we have that. Poor John sitting there in prison and his depression and his sadness and his frustration, not knowing, doubting even. Not because John wasn't a great man. John was a great man. But he didn't have the Holy Spirit that blesses you and me in that sense. That has revealed to us all of those Scriptures. Verse 12, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent taketh by force. What does that mean? That violence in heaven. The violent take it by force. Well, imagine a kingdom, a castle. Grant's Castle. Got big walls, strong walls all the way around it. What's the only way in and out of the castle? In old times, how did you get in and out of the, if you wanted to go in and out of the castle, you had to go through, Garrett, the gate. The doorway. There's a gatekeeper. You might have a big wooden doors that get pushed shut, and then down would come a big iron gate that would help keep out the enemies. Here comes Garrett. He wants in this kingdom. It's late at night. They've closed. The metal doors come down. The wooden doors are shut. How are you going to get in, Garrett? He's thinking over the wall. Well, that's not going to work. But anyways, if we want to get in through the gate, Garrett, he's going to be pounding on that door. Maybe even if there's an enemy coming for Garrett, he wants in here for protection. He's going to be trying to violently take this door down. That's what we see here. Those who are trying to, these are God's people. They want to be part of God's kingdom. So they are coming. It's as though to say, these throngs of people went out to John the Baptist, this great prophet, because they were so thirsty. Pharisees and Sadducees, you left the people so thirsty that they were going to John the Baptist violently, as it were, knocking down that door. They want it. These multitudes love to hear it. They're thirsty. And so it's with that kind of violence, it's as though they're knocking at the door of the kingdom of heaven saying, let me in, let me in. Okay? It's not quite ready. Christ hasn't died on the cross, but these masses of people, they're thirsty. Okay? And the Pharisees and Sadducees have not been feeding them. But John the Baptist was. Okay? So from the days of John the Baptist until the gates of heaven are open, it's going to suffer violence. There are those who are knocking vehemently at that door. We talked about that in prayer. That's how we should pray. All right, continuing on there, verse 13 and following. For all the prophets in the law prophesied until John. And if ye will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Okay? So everything's prophesied up until now. The law and the prophets is sufficient. But whereunto shall I liken this generation is like unto children sitting in the markets and calling to their fellows and saying, we have piped unto you, and we have not danced. We have mourned unto you, and ye have not lamented. Now, what's saying there? Trying to teach that the unbelieving people are like these children who say, well, they're foolish. They dance when they should mourn. Or when it's time to be joyful and happy and dance, instead they do the opposite. They mourn. Okay? So they're always getting confused. It's a time to mourn. A loved one's died. They dance. They're happy. Well, that's the picture, at least, that Jesus is making. Isn't that silly? He's telling Pharisees and Sadducees, isn't that odd? That these children would do that down in the market? That when it's time to be joyful, there they sit mourning. And when it's time to be sad, there they are running around with joy. It's foolishness, isn't it? It's the same thing with you Pharisees. Okay? You're told to do one thing, instead you do the opposite. And then when you're told to do the opposite, then you do the other thing. When are you going to get it straight? When are you going to figure these things out? And then Jesus finally teaches the last thing here about John. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he hath a devil. Right? They thought John was crazy. Here he was, you can imagine, a man walking in camel's hair, munching on grasshoppers as he walked through the streets of Jerusalem, right? A madman, they say. He's crazy. Because John didn't eat the normal way, right? So here comes Jesus, a prophet, the greatest prophet, God, and he's eating and drinking the normal way. So now you would think that the Pharisees and Sadducees would say, aha, this guy isn't crazy like that John the Baptist. But no, now what do they say about Jesus? It says here, he's a gluttonous, a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. Look at, he goes and he feasts and he eats with them. Oh, look at that, he's drinking wine with those wicked, sinful people. I can't believe that he would do those things. So on one hand, they said John the Baptist was crazy because he taught the people in a godly, righteous way, but he didn't eat and drink normally. And here comes Jesus teaching the people in a righteous, godly way, but now he's eating and drinking normally, and now they go the other way. Well, now he's gluttonous. He's wasting food and he's wasting wine, and not only doing it, he's doing it with sinners. Well, which way do you want, Pharisees and Sadducees? What is the right way? What would finally make you happy? What way would finally make them happy? Is there a way, Jen? There's not. Okay? It's like when Jesus teaches why he doesn't do miracles. You have the law and the prophets. First you want miracles, but you won't listen to the law and prophets. So if I give you all kinds of miracles, will you go back to the law and prophets and then believe? No. No matter which way we do it, you're going to think both of them are not enough. Okay? So, Jesus teaches that here. We see John the Baptist kind of for the last time until we see him beheaded by Herod, sadly. But at least I'm sure those prophets or those friends of John the Baptist went back to the prison and told him all about Christ had said. And God visited a spirit upon John and probably gave him comfort in prison. God doesn't leave his people. Okay? God will comfort his people, he promises. So that's a good thing we can think of. John, here at the beginning, having doubts, we can be probably pretty sure that those men, when they came back and told the stories of John, God used those stories to give John comfort and to know that he was the Christ that had come. Now John can look forward to being in heaven. He probably still didn't understand exactly what his end would be. Whether God revealed that to him or not, we don't know. Not important. But we can take some lessons there too. Let's not be foolish as we grow older. We say, well, we want our church to be this one way, but we also want it to be this way over here. No, we have to stay on that narrow pathway that doesn't give us our own choice, the way that we want to do things. We have to do the things the way God teaches us.